Welcome to the Going North podcast, where you will be informed, encouraged, and empowered to embrace your dreams and advance in life through authorship. I am your host, best-selling author of the book Stay the Course, and certified leadership trainer, Dom Reitman. Be sure to check out the goods and services from every guest, as well as the host himself, yours truly. Now let the fun begin. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as the Going North podcast, we got one heck of a guest for you today, my friends. Another guest for you today. Not only is he a TEDx speaker, he's also a comrade on this wonderful website known as Biz Catalyst 360. And I want to shout out the wonderful chief editor, or should I say the chief encouragement officer, Dennis Patoko, Mr. DP himself, for that wonderful website and all of his wonderful wares and having a wonderful community, because it led to me having this wonderful gentleman today, folks. So let's give it up for the one and only true YG himself, Mr. Yonason Goldson. How you doing today, sir?
I am wonderful, Dom. Thanks for having me with you.
Yes, indeed. It's great to have you on, man. Like, you got a TEDx talk, and it's got, let's see, good over 48,000 views, and it's only been a year. So, my goodness, man, and that's only a piece of what you do. I heard you've had some almost gypsy-like adventures in your lifetime.
Well, that's a pretty good way to put it. Yeah. You go to college, and back when I went to college, you didn't really go for a career. You went to find yourself. Now it's way too expensive to find yourself. You better know who you are and where you're going before you get there. I told my kids, you want to go to college, you got to have a plan. But I went to college. I studied English. It was very engaging. It was very stimulating. So what do you do with a degree in English? I don't necessarily recommend you do what I did. I went hitchhiking cross country. Did that for half a year, went across the Atlantic, went backpacking across Europe, ended up in Israel. And that's where I connected with my Jewish roots, of which I really had no knowledge or familiarity whatsoever. Changed the whole trajectory of my life. I lived in Israel for 9 years, became an Orthodox rabbi, met my wife, had our first 2 kids, embarked on my 23-year career teaching high school, 1 year in Budapest, Hungary, 2 years in Atlanta, Georgia, and 20 years in St. Louis, where I live now. And 2016, I retired from teaching and had to decide what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I started my current career as a speaker, coach, and trainer, trying to take the accumulated wisdom of 3,000 years and distill it into a message that's relevant for modern times in the secular world, help professionals recognize why good ethics is good business, and the benefits of intellectual diversity and integrity. And everything is going really well right up until March.
I
don't know if I'm the only person who noticed things that changed in March, but the conference industry took a bit of a hit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can say that again. It's like, yeah, so no more road warrior swag. Now you have to sit at home. Oh wait, we can do these virtual. Oh, what the heck is Zoom? Oh, we got Zoom now. Oh crap, Zoom fatigue. Oh darn. All right.
Yeah. Now that we have that out of our system.
Oh my goodness. So GE is GB. Good ethics is good business. I love that. My goodness. And 3,000 years. My goodness, 3,000 years, baby. That's right. A walking book of Proverbs times 30, probably.
Well, listen, we think we have to figure things out from scratch. And everything we know is available for us. The trick is to find the contemporary relevance in the ancient messages. And that's the challenge. But King Solomon said that there's nothing new under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
He said, don't look back and say, oh, things were so much better then, because that's just foolishness. Every generation says that. And what we have to do is take stock of ourselves. We have to get our bearings. We have to, there's a Jewish story about a fellow who's traveling from Jerusalem to Tiberias, and he comes to a crossroads, and there are roads going off in all directions. Well, there's this directional sign, which is what you would expect to find. The problem is it's broken and it's lying on the ground. Well, that doesn't help much. But then he thinks for a minute, he picks up the sign, stands it on end. He doesn't know where he's going, but he knows where he came from. He came from Jerusalem. So he points the Jerusalem sign back towards Jerusalem. And now he can figure out which path he needs to take to go forward to Tiberias. And the idea is that if we know where we've come from, then we can figure out where we're going. But if we don't have a sense of where we are, we don't have a sense of our direction, we've cut ourselves off from the past, or we've rewritten the past to make it fit into what we think it should have been, then we shouldn't be surprised that we're having trouble figuring out where we are now and where we need to go.
Speaking of figuring out, what led you to Atlanta, Georgia from Israel, my friend?
Well, pretty much what's led me along the way of the last couple of decades is that's where I got a job. My wife and I were living in Israel. I was studying there. I got my rabbinic ordination, trained to be a teacher, and got my first job teaching in Hungary. It was only 4 years after the Iron Curtain had come down.
Oh.
And you had all of these young people in Budapest, Hungary, who had never had the opportunity to know anything about their Jewish heritage, their Jewish traditions. So it was a pretty good first job. It was exotic. Looked really good on a resume. But after a year, we'd had enough. So shopped around, found a job in Atlanta. And it was a nice town. Atlanta's a nice town. A little hot in the summer. But
I'm pretty sure it's still somewhat hot in Missouri during the summer months, I imagine.
Well, it's I grew up in Southern California, so that kind of ruined me for living anywhere. But I like the Midwest. The people are very wholesome here. It's very friendly. The pace is slow. And hot in the summer, cold in the winter. That's lots of places.
Good. Well, glad some things are somewhat still normal. Oh my goodness. Well, that's what I'm talking about indeed. So was able to really get in touch with the Jewish roots again and became a rabbi. And if I'm not mistaken, that wasn't originally your goal at one point. It feels like you were led there, right?
Yeah. If anybody would have told me that I was going to end up, I got to Israel, and my plan was to have a classic Israeli experience by going on a kibbutz, a collective farm. Pick oranges or grapefruits, do that for a couple of months. I'd been traveling for a year. I was exhausted. I'd been living out of a backpack every day, looking for a new place to sleep every night. And I just wanted some routine, but I didn't have a lot of money to just hang out. And I just didn't want to sit around doing nothing. Well, as it turned out, that summer, the dollar was at an all-time high, which meant there were, I think, 8 or 9 million Americans in Europe. And when it started getting cooler in Europe, they all headed south. And so when I got to Israel, went to Tel Aviv, went to the kibbutz placement office to volunteer, and there were signs up. It was early December, I think, and there were signs up saying, "No places for volunteers, come back next year."
Wow.
And it looked like, I'll date myself, it looked like teenagers camping out to buy tickets for a Rolling Stones concert. There's people with sleeping bags and nowhere to go, trying to hoping that something would open up. They said it never happened before in anybody's memory. So okay, the plan was to have some routine, to have some structure in my life, and not spend money. So I remembered that I had heard once that there were places where you could go study the traditions of Judaism. So I went looking and I found one. And the first day they brought me in and they put me in a room and said, Rabbi will be in a few minutes. The room was empty, typical size classroom. It was very cold. And I didn't really have the right kind of clothes. And in the far back corner of the room, there was a window with one ray of sun coming in and landed on one chair. So I thought, okay, maybe I get that sunlight on it, just a little bit of warmth. When I sat down there, over the next few minutes, the whole room filled up to capacity, beyond capacity. The rabbi walked in. Everybody stood up. And I looked for a way out. Because this wasn't just any rabbi. He was Hasidic. If you know what that means, it's a big black hat and a long black coat and a scraggly beard and side locks and glasses with Coke bottle lenses. And I knew it was coming. You better listen to me or you're going to burn in hell for all eternity. So I can't listen to this. I got to get out of here. But I couldn't. I was trapped. Because I'd sat in the far back corner of the room. And the room was now so tightly packed with people, I would have had to literally climb over a dozen people and make a spectacle of myself to get out. All right, I could survive anything for an hour. And then he starts to talk. He doesn't have a Yiddish accent. He has a New England accent. And he sounds like a college professor, which I found out later he was. And he's so articulate and so eloquent. And he makes so much sense. How can somebody who looks like he just walked out of the ghettos of 19th century Europe sound like somebody who should be giving lectures at Johns Hopkins University? And I realized that, this was not what I expected. And if I were sincere, if I were going to have intellectual integrity, then I had to engage him. And I figured it would take me a couple of weeks to start punching holes in the things he said. Well, 9 years later. But it was transformational. It really was. And it's been instructive to me, because if we don't listen to people who think differently from us, who look different from us, who come from different points of view, then we miss so much. We don't give ourselves the opportunity to reevaluate our preconceptions and our values and our understandings. We don't give ourselves the chance to make connections with people who have wisdom to share with us. We don't broaden our circle so that we get a more sophisticated and mature worldview and develop the connections, the skills, the opportunities, the mindset that allows us to build successful communities and really achieve success in all our relationships, in all aspects of our lives.
I just love that story right there, and just so many lessons could just pull from it. Like, heck, even one of my favorites is like Actions the Inspiration, because he came in with the usual garb of a Hasidic Jew, and you thought one thing, but as soon as he spoke, it just changed everything for good. And just the fact that you're so inspired to try to poke holes in what he may have been saying ended up becoming a believer as a result. And heck, that even reminds me of one guy in this book. I think it was Homeless to Billionaire, Andres Pira. He was actually going to Thailand to pick up, to actually just go to a place with sandy beaches. And he actually was handed a copy of the book called The Secret. And he set out to prove the book wrong, but he ended up proving the book right as a result. So it's so funny how sometimes you can just set out to prove things wrong. And it's like, oh, well, it just makes too much sense. How can I prove it wrong?
Yeah, the truth is that even if you set out to prove it wrong, if you do it with sincerity, then if your expectations don't unfold the way you anticipate, you can deal with that and you can accommodate that. And we come out wiser when we find that we've been wrong and we have the integrity to admit it. One of my college professors, he said, I don't understand why people complain about being disillusioned. I would like to be relieved of my illusions. And I remember arguing with him. I said, well, yeah, but that's you. Wouldn't you rather find out that you've been wrong than persevere in being wrong?
Oh my gosh. Like logically that makes so much sense, and yet heck, sometimes I feel like that could be a lot of folks today where it's like I guess maybe it could be the sunk cost theory where it's like they feel like they may have invested so much time into something. They're like, all right, well, instead of going with logic, I'll just double down and just go deeper in the rabbit hole. I
Oh,
guess
no
that
doubt
might be.
about it. No doubt about it. I mean, you think about that. The older we get, the more invested we are in the way we've lived our lives. And, the power of ego is virtually unlimited.
That is so darn true. That is so darn true.
Yeah, but how heroic is it when a person could admit, I've been wrong and I want to get it right. And, the future starts right now.
Amen to that.
I mean, certainly if you're in business, just want to keep throwing good money after bad. It doesn't make any sense. But, as one of my rabbis likes to say, man is a psychological and not a logical creature. But that's our challenge. And if we set standards for ourselves, if we want to accomplish what we're in this world to accomplish, then we're willing to make that struggle.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about indeed. Yeah, that's so darn true. It's like at our core, most times we can be more psychological than logical, more emotional than anything else than logical. It's like we have the ability, but sometimes we just let emotion trump logic.
Yeah, and there's an interplay there. There's a reason why we have emotions, and there's reasons why we have intuition. Because sometimes the heart can corrupt the head, and sometimes the head can corrupt the heart. So it's a dance, and sometimes it's a battle. and you want it to be a battle, because otherwise you can have an unholy alliance. When the heart and the head get together on the wrong page, then you're really in trouble. So it's like any other checks and balances. But it really comes down again, I keep saying the same thing, but because it's true. It really has to do with where we want to end up. Do I want to end up in the place where I have become the best version of myself? Or do I want to be comfortable? Do I want things easy? We are programmed to be lazy. That's just our nature. It's conservation of energy. And how do you combat being lazy? You set goals. I mean, what does it take to become a businessman? What does it take to become a musician? What does it take to become an athlete? What does it take to become a Navy SEAL? I have a vision, and I have a level of commitment. And if I'm lacking vision or I'm lacking commitment, I'm not going to get very far.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It's like trying to drive your car on empty.
As long as you're going downhill, that'll work.
Exactly. It's like, oh, I'm pretty sure not all the roads are downhill. Oh my goodness. And I love what you said there about the checks and balances. So do you feel like there may be, or better yet, what do you think might be the best way for folks to really keep that in mind when they're just going through life, to have proper checks and balances for their life? Like sometimes folks may veer onto the extreme side where they feel like I got to dedicate all my life and my energy to my business and like neglect my family. Some may dedicate all their energy to something else, like a volunteer organization. They may neglect just their well-being. When any thoughts on folks who may be going through that right now, where they've forgotten to keep those checks and balances in place, where they can at least make sure they're dedicating ample energy to each facet of their life?
Yeah, that's a kind of perennial question, isn't it? And we have to start taking care of ourselves, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else. What does it mean to take care of yourself? Well, I mean, this is not anything that we haven't heard before. Um, you live a responsible lifestyle. Eat right, exercise, get sleep. That's the basics. And even though it's basic, a lot of us don't do it properly. Then you have to develop relationships, and relationships require investment. Is we're one of the reasons that we're in crisis today is because everything is so accessible and so easy and so convenient that we've lost the sense of a work ethic. We've lost the sense of investment. We don't realize that you appreciate things more when you work hard for them. And that's people. You want good friends, be a good friend. I want a good wife, I better be a good husband. I want good kids, I better be a good parent. I want good colleagues in my work, I better be a good colleague. I want good employees, I better be a good boss. It's as simple and as complicated as that. But if we're not willing to make the investment in what's truly important, then we're going to find ourselves frustrated and bitter and unfulfilled. And then we're going to start looking for cheap substitutes to make up that difference, that empty space that is inside us. Yeah, you have to have values that go beyond your immediate self-interest. We should all be looking for ways to contribute to the community. But does that mean I abandon my family to go do charity work? Or do I find a way to integrate my charity work with my family? I mean, my career as a teacher, I got paid as a teacher. Not a lot, but I got paid. Mostly was able to make the bills. And did I have dreams of writing a best-selling novel, or being discovered, becoming famous? Sure, why not? But I never resented my job,
Mm.
because I felt that when I went to school, I was making a difference in the lives of young people and helping prepare them so that they could have more successful lives. And there is nothing more gratifying than having a former student come to me and say, that class you taught, that helped me shape my whole worldview.
Mm.
It's a wonderful feeling. And we can all do that on some level. We can do it in our own families. We can do it in our neighborhoods. We can do it in charity work. We can do it in our jobs. Because whatever job you're doing, chances are you have the opportunity to make somebody else's life better by doing it. If you don't, please find another job.
Oh man, yeah, you're definitely right about that now, because especially empathy being more of a must than before nowadays, and really a lot of empathy is really needed in just really all forms of business and communication and employment, and really just have to make sure we try to keep that in mind and really just integrate things properly. So definitely definitely agree with you on there. And thanks again for your service of being a teacher, my friend. It's almost like the armed services of the country. It's like you got to thank them because they don't get paid as well as they should.
It's true. My wife's also a teacher, and she teaches special ed, which really is remarkable to me. And right now, I mean, it's tough. Yeah, hybrid classes and all kinds of new technology, and it's very, very complicated. And the administrations are not, they're struggling too. So trying to serve the needs of the students without burning out the teachers, because if you burn out your teachers, you're not going to be serving your students. I mean, listen, we're all in this together. It's complicated stuff. There's no playbook for any of this. And what makes it work is when you have a culture of trust, when you have a sense that we are working together, that we are open about our struggles, that we are transparent about our agendas. And really, we should be doing that all the time. But now more than ever, to have that attitude of letting people know, how can I help? What can I do? How can we work this out together? Here we've got a problem. Let's get at it, and together try to find a solution that's not going to be perfect, but will allow us to make the best of the situation until we can get through this.
Yeah, that's right. We got to adapt indeed. Adaptability is a must, especially nowadays where it's even more required than ever. So, since this is far from your first rodeo, is there a question that you wish you'd be asked more often when you're on these podcasts?
That's interesting. um, it's interesting. I was in a group online today, and the question, they broke us up into breakout rooms, and they asked something very similar to what you just asked. They, they said, what would you like people to know about you? And what would you like to know about others? And when it was my turn, I said that I often find in these situations that I chafe against the questions. Because, and this is something that I talk about in my TED Talk, our obsession with labels.
Mm.
We're a society that's just obsessed with labels, and it's only getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
And labels are necessary as a starting point, but they become so confining and so restrictive and so divisive. And it leads to all the tribalism. And what I'm enjoying about our conversation right now is that we're just sort of letting things go. And I hope the audience is enjoying it too. But, when there is a joy in discovery that doesn't come from, oh, let me have the clever, insightful question that will unlock all the doors. But rather, let's just get to know each other. And let's see what we discover about each other and about ourselves. So I guess the answer to the question is no.
Hey, but good stuff indeed. I love what you mentioned about the joy of discovery because that's so darn true. Because one of the things that I try to really apply to my life is that growth is happiness. When we grow and become better, it kind of brings a form of happiness because you have the joy of discovering something new, whether you're getting better at something or getting more mastered at something, or heck, even strengthening relationships. So that joy in discovery is a real thing. And heck, that might be something that other folks may need to apply to their lives more now than ever. Because funny enough, actually, during this whole uh, let's call it the evil nonsense going around. I'll probably call it that. Is that even though that's been happening this 2020 year, my mom has actually been connecting deeper with her siblings because my one of my uncles, he's a pastor of a church, and another uncle, he lives in South Carolina, and really just being about a good 7 hours away from each other. Like we're not going to drive 7 hours to go to a church service every Sunday. That's just not feasible. And just the fact that now it's being done on conference call and they talk together, probably about a good hour after the service is over, has really brought them together, and they've discovered more things about each other since they've kind of been apart in a way for years on end. So it's so great to really have the joy of discovery in our lives.
Yeah, and that really is a silver lining, that when we can't connect physically, we have to work harder to connect emotionally and psychologically. And that's exactly what you're describing. And it's ironic that, there's a cliche that distance makes the heart grow fonder, but cliches are true.
Yeah.
And because we have to work harder, I think that in some ways, the technology that has promoted a culture of superficiality is now becoming the antidote, because we can only connect with each other through the technology. And we can't pretend like we're having intimacy because there's physical proximity. So we actually have to create a deeper level of relationship. And something you mentioned a moment ago that I think is particularly relevant. You're talking about the joy of growth. And this is a presentation that I still plan to put together one of these days, that in biblical Hebrew, there are at least 8 words that translate in some sense as joy or happiness. And in biblical Hebrew, there are no true synonyms.
Mm.
All have distinct meanings. And when you get into the etymology, the root meaning of each word, you find that they all have some literal translation of growth or progress or forward motion, because that is where happiness comes from. Happiness is, and it's, I have great respect for Thomas Jefferson, but that phrase, the pursuit of happiness, I think is responsible for so much discontent. Because when you make happiness your goal,
Mm.
you're never going to get there. Happiness is a byproduct of leading a purposeful, meaningful life. You can chase happiness all you want, and it will always remain out of reach. Whereas if you chase purpose and meaning and a higher level of existence, you're going to discover that you're happy, and that's going to sustain you and be with you even through difficult times. Because happiness is not pleasure. Happiness is not some state of bliss. Happiness is not this perpetual aura of contentment. Happiness is the sense that I've made something meaningful with my life. And that means I can be happy even through difficulties, even through tragedies, even through pain, even through suffering.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about, indeed. And even with 8 different words, I believe it was in Hebrew, you said can translate to growth or happiness in the English language, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. It's just stuff like that that's so interesting, especially when you compare the English language to other languages. Because with English, there's like almost like 5 different words for almost every other word. Almost there's like so many words, and there's no true absolute sometimes. And it's just interesting, just from that perspective of how, like, when you really expand your thinking and really just really expand your learning, is that you get to learn different things like that, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, language is a wonderful thing. I mean, I'm a big devotee of George Orwell,
Ah.
and he had a pretty dark side, but he understood that language and culture and clarity of thought is what makes for a successful society or an unsuccessful society. And it takes discipline to be articulate. It takes discipline to think clearly. And it's so easy to get into these patterns of behavior where we're just repeating one another. I mean, look what goes on with with what passes for news in this country now.
Yeah.
You tune into the channels that are going to tell you what you already have decided you want to hear.
Hmm.
So you just end up with continual confirmation bias for everything. You become increasingly convinced that anybody who disagrees with you is either misguided, delusional, or wicked. And then we wonder why we're not getting our problems solved. And we can't find common ground as a society. My conservative friends say, how can you listen to NPR? And my liberal friends say, how can you watch Fox News? And I say, well, if I listen to NPR and I watch Fox News, then maybe I can get a broad enough picture that I can start homing in a little bit on something that resembles the truth.
Mm.
And it's that willingness to look at things from two sides. I just published a book called Grappling with the Gray, an ethical handbook for personal success and business prosperity. And the idea of what does it mean to grapple with the gray? It means that the real decisions in our life are in the gray areas. If it's absolutely black or white, we can usually figure out what we should be doing. But life's not so simple. And trying to reduce our decisions to these binary either or choices is also not dealing with reality. So what I do is I present a number of ethical dilemmas, and then I have guided discussions on how to look at it from both sides. Because only if you could see an issue from both sides can you start to have a certain measure of confidence that you're in a position to resolve the issue, or at least to see it clearly. And if we would be more willing, that's what we were talking about before, listen to people who are coming from a different point of view. Not so we can respond, not so we can say our piece, not so we can refute them, not so we can argue with them, but so that we could really try to understand where they're coming from first. And then we can start to discover, wow, maybe we actually do have something in common. Maybe there is common ground. And every once in a while, ooh, maybe I was wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Not everybody's your wife. You don't have to concede all the time, or you don't have to be right all the
time. Maybe you should edit that one out. I
don't know. We'll see.
Just looking after you, pal.
If they come after me with tiki torches, I'll be like, social distancing. Oh my gosh. Well, enough of my magical corn. Who am I kidding? There's probably more magical corn to come. But we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive. And that is, if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but this time in the current year, what advice would you give to yourself?
Oh my goodness. I think that the advice would be say yes more often. For much of my life, I was very hesitant to take chances if I didn't feel confident that I could be successful. And I missed out on opportunities that if I would have been a little more aware, a little more alert, a little more willing to take a chance, might have taken me places that I'm still trying to reach. And it doesn't mean being reckless or being foolhardy. That was the hitchhiking trip. But sometimes we feel like if I put myself out and I'm not ready yet, I'll blow the chance, and I won't I won't get another shot. And that's, could be. Sometimes that's the price of doing business. But when opportunities arise, try to take advantage of them because they may not come around again. And certainly in a time like now when everything is so topsy-turvy, who knows what some unexpected turn of events is going to open a door that could lead in a direction that could take us places we never imagined we could end up.
There we go, indeed. That's right. So the cornfield, you can end up in an amusement park, right? Oh, man. But definitely love it, indeed. Definitely so right. It's definitely just got to say yes to life a lot more. Often not be totally reserved all the time and say no all the time. Just got to say yes a little more than no, depending on the situation.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is that there's no app for living a good life. We're looking for the easy way. We're looking to simplify and eliminate the stress and the tension, but that's not reality. Life is tension. Life is challenge, and that's what makes it worth living. So embrace it.
Oh, yeah. Sounds like a social media post right there. There's no good app. There's no app for living a good life. You're going to need multiple apps, and that still doesn't guarantee it. Oh, my goodness. Woo! Well, definitely enjoyed this one with a big I in. Indeed, definitely enjoyed it indeed. So for those who want to enjoy more of what you have to offer, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you?
Easiest way is my website, which is my name, Yonason Goldson, YONASON GOLDSON.com. Very active on LinkedIn and a little less so on the other social media, but always eager to continue the conversation. So reach out, connect. Look forward to it.
Woohoo! Well, there you have it, folks. Reach out to Yonason himself, baby. Head over to the wonderful LI, the LinkedIn. Yes, indeed. Don't worry about the evil marketers or trying to ruin it. There's still some great stuff happening over there, indeed. Over to his wonderful website. Buy all of his books. Share with your friends, your family, your colleagues. Heck, share with your cat, too, indeed. They might get some good wisdom, indeed. They might find their past life in there, since it's 3,000 years of wisdom, baby. Yes, indeed. So any parting words before we close up shop, Yonason?
Well, I'm very taken with the quote by Mark Twain. He said, "Always do good. You'll gratify some and astonish the rest."
You just got done listening to another powerful, power-packed episode of the Going North podcast. I hope you really enjoyed what you heard. You made it all the way to the end. You get to hear all sorts of goodness. I was the best, but you just got done hearing some goodness. Go check out the guest stuff. It's all in the show notes on the website, donbrightman.com, and also reach out to those that you've just heard as well. And keep rocking it, because you yourself are phenomenal for making it this far. And keep going north.